So this year I decided to take a break from doing holiday specials for Forgotten Media, mostly to try and focus on certain episodes leading up to episode 100, as well as some other projects related to Archie Sonic. I know this video is late, but I felt like doing another retrospective on my Forgotten Media series. This time only focusing on the Halloween specials so that I still kept up this tradition in some way. Cancelled Nightmare Before Christmas Figures and Ride. The first one I made to be a Halloween special was a video talking about some cancelled Nightmare Before Christmas figures and a cancelled Dark Ride. Being a fan of the movie, it was fun to work on this episode and making them more of a double feature since there wasn't that much info about them. Funny enough, I originally used stock footage to represent the characters for the cancelled figures, but after I uploaded the episode, I just so happened to stumble upon actual photos from an old Toy Fair event of the cancelled Series 7 figures, so I went back to re-edit the video and re-upload it. And it's a good thing too, because unlike the photos and details for that cancelled attraction ride still existing on the internet, the same can't be said about NECA's Series 7 figures. Most sites that talk about the NECA Nightmare Before Christmas figures don't seem to mention them. I can't find the site where I originally found the photos, and sadly I didn't save them on an external hard drive or anything. So it looks like my video is the only surviving piece of evidence that these cancelled figures are real, the only thing keeping them from being lost to time forever. I guess the only thing I have to add to this is to try and explain the whole rippable arm thing from that cancelled Oogie figure. At first, I didn't bring it up back then because I kind of thought it was just random, but now I feel like this was done more as a reference to when Jack defeated Oogie in the film. The first thing that comes undone is his left arm, and the figure has a noticeable outline that is on the left arm. Presumably this is where the removable arm feature would have been, just like the movie. But other than that, hopefully one day someone can find those images in better quality and archive them somewhere. Otherwise, I'll have to keep this video protected. Dark Castle games. Back then I tried to avoid covering anything that the angry video game nerd had already covered. I think it was because I was trying to avoid copying ideas and just figured my takes would be inferior compared to his. I did eventually lighten up on that rule, but back then this was the only exception. I watched his video on Dark Castle when he covered the Genesis and CDI versions, and then I got bored and googled the name and was surprised to see that there was more than one Dark Castle game. So I decided to have some fun in covering a brief history on the series. Looking back, I'm a bit mixed on it. This was back in the day when I relied on other people's opinions on the game and highlighted the most popular ones, before I started focusing more on playing the game for myself, then express my personal thoughts on the topic. The only one I actually got around to playing was Return to Dark Castle, but that happened years after I made the episode. And it's nice. It's pretty much the definitive Dark Castle experience, featuring all the levels from the first two games and its own selection of original levels. I would recommend it, but I'm not sure if it's still available to buy, or if it can run on more modern Macs, since this is a pretty old game from back in 2008. And I haven't seen anyone trying to emulate it either, so who knows. This episode was the first to establish the whole Halloween-themed title card, and the origins of the whole Halloween-themed slogan. It's much different here, but later I would improve it in the later Halloween specials, where I'd always open up with, "Welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff beyond the grave, mwahaha." Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy. 2012 was a rough year for the series, mainly because the co-op episode on Super Robot Monkey Team was taking longer than I had thought. So I needed something quick for some filler episodes, and decided to pick out the two lesser-known monster cereals from General Mills. And not much to say about this episode, but I guess I might as well talk about their brief comebacks that happened after I made the episode. In 2013, both Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy would make their return with the rest of the monster cereals, and having new flavors. Originally, they were fruit-flavored cereals, with Fruit Brute having lime-flavored marshmallows, and Yummy Mummy having vanilla-flavored marshmallows. Now they've been relaunched with orange and cherry flavored cereal. Sadly, I missed out on that as I was too focused on community college stuff and felt bad that I never got a chance to experience it for myself. But surprisingly, this year in 2022, Fruit Brute would return once again, and this time I got to try it out for myself. And for a cherry flavored cereal, it's okay. Maybe next year they'll bring back Yummy Mummy. MediEvil. I remember looking up info on Carnival, and someone brought up MediEvil. At first I thought they were part of the same series, but nope. So out of curiosity, I looked up a video that had the opening cutscene and some gameplay, and I was instantly hooked from what I saw, and decided to cover them for a Halloween episode. I got the first game on the PSN store on my PS3. It took me a while to hunt down a copy of MediEvil 2 because most of the time it was expensive and it was usually the PAL version that kept popping up on eBay. And MediEvil Resurrection I got factory new, still sealed, for only $10. Of course, this was back in 2012. Nowadays, I'm sure the price has gone up for that PSP remake. And since Dan was going to be featured in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, I made the video to kinda hype up the release for that game. Even if by the end of it all, it came off as more of an average Smash Bros. Clone. But yeah, I'm happy with how this episode came out. Playing the games for myself for once and write down my own personal thoughts. Of course, nowadays, we also have the MediEvil Remastered game on the PS4, and that game was great. It's a nice remaster of the PS1 game, the music being a mixture of remastered tracks and recycled tunes from MediEvil Resurrection, and being able to unlock the original PS1 game is a nice bonus, and it's a nice way for newcomers to experience both the old and the new versions. Though it would have been nice to see scrapped levels be brought back, along with a full remastered version of MediEvil 2, since that game is still a bit pricey to find nowadays. I was surprised to see them add in Dan's helmet, and I was like, taking a page out of the Japanese version, I see. Though back then it was just a cosmetic item, this time it unlocks more of a hard mode for the game. Monster Mash. I think this was a film recommended to me by 6T76T, longtime follower of my series and a friend of mine, where she and her brother have sometimes helped out with doing the title cards for Forgotten Media. So I decided to check out this film, and I was entertained. Nothing special, but I guess I just enjoy those kind of films, where the underdogs prove themselves worthy to be great again. I was surprised to discover that there were two versions of the film that had minor differences, so I tried to mention both of them in the episode. But yeah, it's just a decent kids film, in my opinion, and yeah, not much to say about this one. Carn-Evil, probably one of the more violent topics I've covered on Forgotten Media. Still, I just thought it would be neat to get around to covering this, despite my lack of knowledge of actually playing the game for myself. For a while I thought this game was hard to find, but I've had several people comment that they've seen the arcade in the wild in certain areas. So yeah, I guess this game isn't too forgotten as I thought. You just gotta look in the right place to find the arcade and play it without relying on emulation or paying hundreds of dollars for the arcade system alone. Now, if only the game would be ported onto more modern consoles. I could see it coming to Steam, but oh well. The Halloween that almost wasn't. I honestly had no idea what I was getting myself into when doing this episode, but I was entertained by its cheesiness. It was another fun one to cover. This was also the first Halloween special with the live-action segments, so I figured I'd dress for the occasion by pulling out this old vampire cape that was lying around in my parents' house. I think it used to belong to my uncle. But after that, with the exception of the next episode, I decided this would become a new tradition for the Halloween specials, where I'd always dress up as a different character instead of my usual minor outfit. Munsters Double Feature. Another Halloween special covering two topics, the Mini Munsters and Mockingbird Lane. Originally I was going to feature Here Come the Munsters, but my VHS copy from eBay hadn't come in yet, so I was kinda stuck with two, and by the time I did get the VHS, it was already too late. Coincidentally, this was the last time I would do two Halloween specials in 1 year. From then on, I stuck to just doing one to help relieve some stress with my personal life, as I'm always busy during the holidays with personal life, work, or back then it was college, nowadays it's just, real personal life, with apartment life and paying bills and yada yada, all that adulting stuff. I was already well familiar with the Munsters, so it was nice covering some of the franchise's more lesser-known topics. Mini Munsters being an okay attempt at trying to make a cartoon series, while Mockingbird Lane was a failed attempt at making a more modern and darker take on the series. And even to this day, they're the only Munsters-related things that you can only find on the internet, since they never got a physical or streaming release, at least officially. And before I forget, I might as well give my quick thoughts on the new Munsters film by Rob Zombie. I thought it was decent, nice callbacks to the show and all. It does have its problems, it could use some work here and there, but I'm not too negative about it. Besides, compared to Mockingbird Lane that we got back in 2012, geez, I just realized this new film came out 10 years after Mockingbird Lane. But anyway, compared to that, Rob Zombie's The Munsters feels more like a step in the right direction. Here Come the Munsters. As I mentioned before, this was originally planned for the Munsters double feature episode, but decided to wait until next year to cover it. And I did, and it was a nice film. I feel like I wasn't as positive as I thought I would be, and I think it was mostly because this was around the time when Donald Trump was the president. You know, the whole, oh, we need to build a wall and yada yada. And since this film was about some guy trying to run for Congress and trying to get rid of the foreigners, it was a rather uncomfortable moment with trying to write this episode, as I didn't want to get too political. That's always been one of my top priorities on what not to do when making my videos. Don't get into politics, because me and politics just don't go together. Aside from that, I still think it's a film worth checking out, but its availability is very cryptic. Most VHS copies I found always point to Hollywood video rentals. The DVD was only released in Europe, and despite it being made by Universal, it did air on Fox. It really does raise a lot of questions on why the limited releases. Like, why keep this film under the rug? Is it because of the whole deal with one of the main baddies trying to get rid of the foreigners? Why have the VHS releases be exclusive to Hollywood Video and not commercially available? Why keep the DVD exclusive to Europe? Why no future releases on Blu-ray and streaming? Is there some kind of rights issue between Universal and Fox or something? Seriously, there must be answers to all this. Anyway, in this episode I pulled out my old Luigi costume that was custom made for this episode. And I felt like putting the monster cereals in the background because 2015 was actually my first time trying the stuff. And in the end, I'm more of a Boo Berry fan. I mean, Frankenberry's also good, but Count Chocula is just okay. Not as good as Cocoa Puffs in my opinion. Moville Mysteries. This was an interesting series to cover. I think I mostly got the idea covering it from 16 Six Stars, who was a real hardcore fan of the series, and even helped out with doing the title card. When I finally finished it, she didn't like it, and looking back at it, yeah, I'll admit it was rushed and could have been better. Lots of stuff was going on in my personal life around that time, and I could have pushed it back instead of just posting it on October 16th. Still, I think it's a great show. I highly recommend checking it out if you can find a way to watch it. And of course, this was the year where I embarrassed myself with that terrible mummy costume. I literally just took a wad of toilet paper and tried to wrap it around myself. It did not go well. Maybe one day I'll revisit Moville Mysteries, and maybe this time 16 Six Stars will join me for a special guest star. Well, of course, that all depends if she's comfortable with the idea or not. Disney's The Haunted Mansion video game. This was a lot of fun. I saw this game going for $5 at a Play and Trade, which is a video game store that sells a lot of used games from old ones to the more modern ones. I kind of bought it just for laughs, like, oh right, this was made around the time the live-action Haunted Mansion film came out. Let's just see how bad this one is. But after playing through it, I was surprised that this game was doing more of its own thing, and it became more of a hidden gem for me. So yeah, good game. This is also the first time where I tried to do something different, where I filmed myself in the dark, with little lighting. So of course I had to film the live-action bits at night, while having one LED light shining in my face. I tried making that arm look like it's coming from the closet, but it didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped. Now, the cap he had, there is a funny story to that. This was back in 2017, so around that time Mario Odyssey was getting ready to come out, and I was struggling to think of a new costume to put on for the Halloween episode. I didn't have a Nintendo Switch at the time, but I saw GameStop was selling some cappy hats to advertise the game, so I felt like getting one, because I just thought it looked cool. And then the idea suddenly clicked, like, hey, I'll just dress up as Mario with the cappy hat for the costume in the video. So yeah, it was a really simple outfit. It was just my usual overalls from the miner's outfit, the cappy hat, and a long-sleeved red shirt instead of the usual red t-shirt. Hoops and Yo-Yo's Haunted Halloween. Man, 2018 was not a good year for Forgotten Media. All I could muster up was the holiday specials. This is around the time I'd finished college and I was kind of stuck in a rut, trying to struggle to figure out where to go exactly with my life and not be stuck living with my parents' house forever. Also, this was around the time my sister had moved back into my parents' house for a while, so I was moved back into my old and smaller room, which made it really hard to try and make these Forgotten Media episodes in this cramped space. The outfit I picked out this time was actually my chimney sweep outfit from when I was doing Mary Poppins for a community theater. I wasn't able to get their permission to use it. It was just a simple black shirt and hat and all that. Getting the lights to work with the new setup was a nightmare. Having to use multiple flashlights, very limited spaces on where I can actually put them to point them at me, and one of them kept flickering on and off. Yeah, that and Moville Mysteries were very stressful to work on. As for the topic itself, I just picked out this one since I figured I already covered Hoops and Yo-Yo Ruined Christmas, so I'll just do the Halloween one. Coming up with a new way to talk about Hoops and Yoyo without repeating the same thing I did for the Christmas special was a bit of a challenge. I already gave a quick rundown on who they are and all that, so I decided the only thing worth talking about was the whole black hole controversy. But yeah, not one of my favorites, mostly because of all the technical issues with doing the live action bits. Disney's The Haunted Mansion comics by Slave Labor Graphics. This was another great episode. This and the Haunted Mansion video game are some of my personal favorites on the Forgotten Media Halloween specials. But man, it was quite the challenge trying to get all the issues. I mostly had my mom help out with getting them, and they weren't cheap. I had to pay like over $100 to get all the issues, so that's like $50 for the compilation volume that has almost all the stories, and another $50 just for that one issue that wasn't featured in the compilation. But it was worth it. I feel like Disney's Haunted Mansion works better at being an anthology series, which is what the series is mostly about. Lots of dark humor, varied artwork, good stuff. Another one I recommend if you could find a way to read it. I did check out the other Haunted Mansion comics from Marvel and IDW, and they're just okay. I still think Slave Labor Graphics is the better one. Since I did the whole "Welcome, Foolish Mortals" bit for the video game episode, I just felt like doing the full intro just for the fun of it. And this time I'm back in the other room and dressing up all fancy, trying to look like someone from the Haunted Mansion ride. Someone asked if I was going as the Gentleman Ghost, which wasn't the case, but looking back at it, yeah, I can see the similarities. Also, the ending where I disappeared was a simple editing trick. It was all done in one take. I filmed myself with the ghost host quote, and then I stood there for a few more seconds. Then I left the spot and let the camera film that empty space for a while, and then I edited the clips together with a fading effect. I was originally going to have my hand cover the light to darken the room to make it more creepy to end with, but it didn't turn out well as I'd hoped, so I just scrapped it. The New Misadventures of Ichabod Crane. The last Forgotten Media Halloween special with the live action segments. So yeah, it goes without saying that I was really struggling with working on Forgotten Media videos during 2020. Not just for the fact that Moville Mysteries was a very time-consuming episode, but also because of my unstable mental health that was happening during the COVID-19 pandemic. Even so, I managed to get through making another Halloween special. It would be tempting to bring up the pandemic during that time, but I avoided making any kind of reference to that in my videos. This is another main rule of mine that I did, avoiding mentioning the pandemic, mostly for the sake of my mental health, and just as a way for, the simple escapism and looking for forgotten things and having fun with it, keeping my videos as they were and not come off as being too dated. So that year, I felt like digging up my TF2 engineer costume for the live action bits. Funny how it came full circle after people saying that I looked like the engineer from TF2 with my standard miner outfit. But as for the lighting, yeah, it's shit. I was trying to figure out a new light setup in my apartment, and it just didn't work. Even when I tried editing the footage in iMovie, it still looked like garbage. But anyway, for the topic itself, I first heard about this special from Familiar Faces channel's YouTube channel, and it's definitely one of the weirdest reimaginings of Sleepy Hollow. Honestly, it just speaks for itself. Just go watch it. Also, I really like the title card that 6T's brother helped out. It may be a little misleading from how dark it is, but I still think it's awesome. A Crash Bandicoot Tiger electronic game. The most recent one, the first Halloween special with the new PNG tuber look, and the last episode that was made in iMovie. I got to have some fun design in the background, showing characters from topics that I've already talked about on Forgotten Media, but with a dark twist, like Sheep from Sheep in the Big City, now a ghost and living in an abandoned city, and Kalala Princess as a zombie in front of the Dark Beauty Castle from Epic Mickey, or at least some concept out of it. I was heavily inspired by the portraits that were changed in the Disney Haunted Mansion ride after leaving the stretching room. I just designed the characters and the portraits. The backgrounds were all taken from Google Images. Minus the scrupulous snake one, I just made up the black and orange background myself. So now I'm the Invisible Man. This was something I always wanted to do for a Halloween special, but wasn't sure how to pull it off with the live action segments. Now with the new illustrations, it made things a lot easier, where I just simply erased the hands and head and edited the hat to make it look more complete. As for the topic itself, this was another tiger game that I felt like covering for its uniqueness. And with all the spooky themes going on, I felt like it was perfect for a Halloween special. But yeah, always tricky trying to record good gameplay with a camera on tiger games. Not to mention the annoying music playing. But yeah, the new current style that I'm sticking with for Forgotten Media, and I think it came out great for a first Halloween special. So, what of the future for the Halloween specials? Well, there's still plenty of topics to cover, whether it's related to Halloween or just something more spooky. I made several attempts to do something related to Splatterhouse, but they always kept getting scrapped. Originally, I was going to cover the entire series, but later on, I decided to only focus on the spin-off game that was only released in Japan until the Namco Museum Archive came out and released it in America for the first time. One project I've had on my mind for years is Forgotten Media's 13 Days of Halloween. This is an idea where I was heavily inspired by Cinemassacre's Monster Madness. Basically, I would cover 13 Halloween-themed episodes in October. Starting on October 19th, I'd post daily episodes leading up to Halloween. So yeah, very ambitious compared to how simple Ozmonth was. I don't know when it'll happen, but I hope it'll happen someday. That's about it for this video, so I'll see you next time.